Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mama Genius Hub podcast. I got Mel Findlater here. We're so excited to talk about mom's big, audacious dreams. That's what genius is all about, is what is that dream inside of you? And Mel is all about that as well. So we're going to just have a conversation. How do we get into those dreams? What do we do about them? And we're just going to enjoy it so much. So let me go ahead and introduce Mel for everyone. She believes that mothering is all senses of the world. Okay, I need to work on moving my screen because, that's what happens, right? When you try to read up there. We're going to start this all over because we can do that. Here we go. Believes that it is mothering in all sense of the word that is needed to change the world. So she does everything she can to help make their big, audacious, impact-driven dreams a reality. From finding the courage to shifting the unhelpful beliefs, Mel uses coaching, curiosity, and connection to move moms forward and ultimately make this world a better place. This is why Mel and I get along so well. We have so much in common because our whole vision is let's get moms out there, figuring out what is there more. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Mel. Welcome.
Thank
Yes,
you.
welcome.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Mel, and this is always a funny question, always what I start with on my podcast too. And it's always like, who is Mel? I'm so many things, right? But some of my labels or titles, I suppose, would be that I am a mom. I have 2 kids, an 8 and a 5-year-old. I live on Vancouver Island. I am a wife and a coach and a soccer player and a water lover and so many things. And I have been on my own journey into motherhood, and I am using all the experience of coming out of that and everything I learned to help moms and make the world a better place, essentially. My belief is that it is moms or women with mothering instincts even that are going to change the world. And the problem is that so many of us don't have the confidence or the connection to ourselves and our identity to go out and do that, and to even be able to dream. And once we get that dream, to take it to the next level. So I'm determined to help people get there, really.
I love that. That's why we kind of on the same kind of mission is let's get into that. What is that more that moms have? And then how do we actually make that a reality? And so what for you, how do you go about extracting that from moms?
So my belief is that the initial thing that every human needs, as well as moms, of course, is to be seen and heard. And when we're seen and heard, we feel like we matter, right? We start to value ourselves, and we realize that someone else values us, because so often we can go through like a whole day, a week, even a month, not feeling like we were seen and heard by anybody, because our kids interrupt us for no fault of their own, developmental stage, right? And we don't get to even finish a sentence, let alone have like 15 minutes to actually like blurt something out. So being seen and heard is the biggest first thing. And that's where a lot of the coaching actually comes in. And then, helping people see that they matter, connecting with themselves, giving them the tools to do that, connecting them with others. So that sense of belonging, right? Like I know, you know this, like that's your big thing too, right? And we need other people in our life. And there's a sign behind me, which you probably can't read, which says, as humans, we are designed to do something bigger than ourselves together with others. And it is that together with others part that enables us to do that. So I connect people together and build community around that. And then help mothers figure out what their actual dream is. What's their purpose, right? We're all often chasing this purpose as if it's outside of ourselves, but it's already there. We just need to connect in with it. And by doing that, we'll suddenly feel like all this impact that we can create in the world, and have no choice almost but to pursue it, because we're so excited.
I love that. I love how you say that it's like already inside of us. And I think that's where the
Yeah.
part is we forget it. And that's where I've like, when I'm looking at doing all of this, I look at when, like when you're washing the dishes, I always bring up washing the dishes. I don't know why, but all of a sudden you're like, oh, nope, that's coming back up again. I'm just like, tears come down your eyes. You're like, I want to do something. There's more out there. And all of a sudden you just push it right back down. And then you like go on and you let the busyness, which is why we're going to talk a little bit about busyness later, come back in to just suppress it all. So how do we release some of that to figure out what is already inside of us?
Yeah. And one of the biggest, well, I mean, be seen and heard. Find someone to like that will actually listen to what you have to say. Actually a recent episode on my podcast with Nick Heap that's coming out this week, he talks all about this concept of listening and how it would change the world if we all learned to listen to each other and felt listened to. And you know, if we could find a listening buddy and say, I'm going to take 15 minutes and then you take 15 minutes and the other person purely listens. There's no like advice or anything like that. Just listen and like look engaged. Find someone that you can do that with, right? And it might feel awkward at first, but being so intentional about that, having that time and saying, I need like, because when was the last time you had 15 minutes uninterrupted to say what you want to say? Anything, even if you don't know what to say in that 15 minutes, it just comes out. It'll come, right? So listening is the key answer, I think, to that question.
I love that so much because I think that that's even why I do the women's circles, is because it is all about really, truly listening to each other again, because we've forgotten how to do that. Again, it's like, what am I going to say next? What am I going to do to try to fix their problem? And then by having those thoughts, you're not actually really listening to the person anymore. Yeah. You're like blocking that because you're too busy. So again, like you're saying, for listening purposes, some of the best things to do are, instead of trying to figure out what you're going to say next, try to repeat what they've said, or make sure you've understood what they've said so they can process more. And the other thing,
the great thing about this process of having a 15 minutes each is you don't say anything afterwards. You just say, oh, thank you for sharing.
I love that. Yeah.
All those thoughts that are going through your mind, you just can more easily dismiss them because you don't have to come up with something intelligent to say afterwards, right? When you're really intentional about it. And in a more like natural conversation, I always enter it with this space of curiosity. And I've learned that over time. Coaching was like one of the best skills I learned because it helps me to stop that thinking in my head and just go, what am I curious about right now? I don't have to seem smart about what I'm going to reply or anything like that. Just what am I curious about that person? And that's how people feel seen and heard.
I love that, because you're actually engaging with them instead of worrying about what you're going to do, and leading with that curiosity, and just makes all the difference. And doing that with your kids as well. It was getting to that, because a lot of times we cut our kids off. And also in giving like that with the listening buddy, is learning that skill in the 15 minutes and then transferring that to people outside of you to truly, utterly to listen to each other and not cut them off. And the part I love the best, what is your take on silence when someone like doesn't sure what they say? What's your take on that?
Give it to them, right? Give it to them without looking awkward, right? Just be okay with it. And that's really hard. I know that that's really hard. Some people more than others. And there's kind of, I think each of us have like a threshold that we're willing to give for that without then feeling awkward. Like, are you going to talk? I'm not sure what's happening, especially because it's often in those moments of silence that the emotion comes out because we've allowed it, right? We've allowed them the space to feel whatever it is that was coming up for them, right? Or for ourselves in that moment. And then we're like, oh, are they sad because I didn't talk and I gave them silence, And no, silence is one of the most powerful gifts we could give someone. Silence whilst listening, right? Because I can still listen even if you're not talking.
It's so true. And I see that's so vital when we're talking to our kids as well, because a lot of times we cut them off and we think we want to like give them advice or something. And then all of a sudden they shut down and they hadn't even finished expressing what they wanted to. And so the silence is such a magical moment to get used to, because it feels so awkward. You're right. Like,
yeah,
can I do it? Can I? So I think we're both sitting here encouraging you, sit in comfort in the silence and see what the silence brings, because there's golden on the other side of it.
Yeah. And as you say, like not only with other adults, but with kids, I think that's a really good point. And I think I'm actually better with adults than kids at that, right? I think my daughter teaches me to be okay with silence because she's a deep thinker and she wants to take her time. And I'm going, all right, like, did you hear the question? I'm not sure if you heard the question, but most of the time she's just really thinking it through. And sometimes she'll answer like 10 minutes later, right? Like, not all the time, of course, but yeah. And everybody just processes a different kind of.
Right when you said that, you made me think of my son, like, oh, wait, am I doing that? And so what I say to him is it's okay to respond, I'm still thinking, or I don't know yet, but please just respond.
Or just look at me so I know that you're about to respond at some point in time. Yeah, I know.
Right. I was like, you don't need to respond. You can think for longer, but I just need to know that you actually like identified that I asked you a question.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to us feeling the need to be seen and heard, right? And when our kids are still learning those skills, it doesn't make us feel seen and heard. So we got to find that elsewhere sometimes, right? So that we can fill that bucket.
So we can have the full cup when we have to deal with the kids who are still learning the process.
Exactly.
I love that. So that is such a great takeaway already, is that find a listening buddy. And if you're struggling to do that or don't have something, come to one of my women's circle, come to one of Mel's programs. I mean, that's what we're trying to design to do, is that's what this is all about, is finding the right community. So let's go into a little bit about community and ideas of how do we build that community around us because I mean, you have this idea of creating these big audacious dreams, but how do we bring those out of us? And I know community is one of the key components to do that.
It really is. And I think actually listening buddy is a great first step towards that, right? And also entering this space of curiosity, right? So like I used to have a story that I told myself frequently, and I still do, and stop myself, that I don't like small talk and that I'm really awkward with new people, right? And offline, I can still I can feel my thoughts right now going, offline, you still are, Mel. But it's like that story is there because I still feel like, because of the natural instinct that us humans have, that we need to sound intelligent when we're trying to connect with other people. And the reason I share this is in the context of your question around community, is in finding a new community. If you just don't have one around you that is actually supporting, sometimes when we have big audacious dreams, they're out of the norm, right? They're not what your mom did or your sister did or your neighbor did or whatever, right? Your best friend. And they're looking at you like, I don't quite get it. And because they love you so much, they fear for your risk and all the different things, and yeah, like some of these dreams take a little bit of risk in our life. We're not in a normal quote unquote job, as my mom has told me before. When are you going to get a normal job? Well, don't I have one? We talked about being a teacher. I was like, well, I am teaching. What? But anyways, so sometimes we have to go find a new community, and that's hard. But if we enter it with that curiosity and that courage to actually just listen to the other person and then assess whether you think that's someone that you're, would love to spend more time with, and build it from there. Right? Because so often we'll go in thinking like, how am I going to I want to tell people about what I do. I want to figure out who gets what I do. So you talk about yourself, but that's not how. We don't just knock on people's doors anymore and just say hey, I'm Mel, and try to tell myself all about myself, right? It's not really the way it works. So certainly starting to build those connections and friendships in person, but also, do you know what? Online is sometimes easier. Michelle and we met on a course about building our big dreams, right? So there was an automatic filter there that connected me with people who believed what I believe. And then we build from there, right? And there's places like yourself and me who are creating these communities intentionally. And we can just be like, hey, I really need this. I'm going to go in and join this community. So, you can do it through your natural senses and build that up. I recommend both, to be honest, because we need those friendships as well. We need those in-person relationships. But the best tip is to just go try and
I love
listen.
that. And I love the idea of just leading with that curiosity, because actually this past weekend, I had never talked to this mom before. And I just started leading with questions. I was curious because we were at a swim meet and I was curious about how her daughter is doing, and just kept, and eventually led into a more deep conversation than I've had with most people, like in that kind of situation, is because and again, it does take like going into that conversation a little bit, talking about whatever you're doing at, and then kind of like weeding it out, like asking a couple questions, like, is this person willing to go a little bit deeper? Some people are, some people aren't. And so again, it's not that you just go like dive off the deep end, speaking of swimming, right, into asking these really deep questions right away, but kind of like lead into it and then ask a couple questions. And we were talking probably 2 hours for a side table, like doing different things or whatever. And like, I don't know if we'll talk again or what, but it was just those types of conversations. I'm realizing I'm having more and more, even with people around me, by leading, like having the courage to lead that conversation through curiosity. And I was just asking questions about what's going on instead of just the normal, how's the weather? How, where are the kids up to? And I feel like those were always like you said, the small talk.
Yeah. And you might start there, and that's okay. That's okay, right? But then you can the fact is, I'm not looking for someone that I only small talk to all the time, right? So I might start there, and the courage is in saying, it's okay if I then ask a question that they're like, whoa, because it's just out of the norm for them, right? It's okay if then they're like, I don't actually want to talk about that. That's okay.
Then you change the conversation, but if you don't try, you're right.
Yeah, totally. And honestly, if we enter with curiosity, not like why is the sky blue, or what are your deepest, darkest fears? Don't go in with that as your leading line, right? But might be like you might start with how was your morning, and then they'll probably rant about something, because all of our mornings are always hard getting kids to school, right? That's the way our conversation started today. And you might be like, oh, you could dig it in deeper about that if you want, or you could lead it on to okay, so what's the plan for the rest of the day? When do you get you time today? Or how are you going to reshift that for yourself? And they'll be like, oh, and then it'll promote them to think, even if they don't answer to you. So, yeah.
I love that so much. And so a lot of this is first starting to have these conversations and find people have these conversations with, because that's what's going to bring out the more in us, is through these conversations. It's like you said, being seen, heard by someone else really brings that out in you. And that's why I propose the women's circle so much, because all of a sudden you're speaking from the heart, which you didn't realize. And so even these one-on-one conversations have that same type of intention to learn from the heart. So the other aspect I know that you speak on, especially in your name, permission to be human, is that idea of permission, because we feel like a lot of times we lack that. So I don't know if you want to go a little deeper into that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the title came from the concept, there's permission to be human, right? So there's permission and there's human in that. And so often we feel like we have, especially as women, we feel like we need to ask permission. We don't necessarily go out and say, is it okay? But that's what's going on in our mind. And we're waiting for it. We're waiting for this permission to follow a dream, or to, especially things that are bigger, right? Not necessarily permission to do something that's within the box, but certainly permission to step out. But also the human part is around, it's okay that this is hard. Life is hard. It's okay to feel guilty because you're chasing a dream, or you went away on a trip that you really need because you need to feel connected and seen and heard. It's okay to feel. It's okay to feel, right? Those are human emotions. And when we allow ourselves and be okay, and we give ourselves permission, they pass, right? When we don't allow ourselves that permission, they stay. They stay and they bottle up and they sit right here for me, right below the neck, and I want to scream, right? And I know that everybody listening has experienced that at some point in time, right? Because we hold it in, and it's permission to be human allows us to let that pass. It allows us to cry when we need to cry, in whatever moment you feel like that's appropriate, but to let it all out and to laugh and to, all of the human emotions, allow ourselves to play. It's so important to play with our kids, but also whatever that means for us in our life. What does play look like? Right. Like I have, for an example, something that I really want to do. And I'm like, still working through allowing myself permission to do is like, I have this, I've started through a lot of like deep connection with work with myself to realize the anger I have for like the patriarchy and all the things around it, right? And I need to release that, right? I got to get that out, and I need to give myself permission to get that out in a healthy way and through a playful way. For me, like play and anger feel like they would actually go really well together. So I have this temptation in England. They used to have at fairs these things where you had like plates and different like vintage dishes and various things, and you would throw things at them and you would break them. Or you'd take a dish and you'd throw it at the ground and you'd break it. I have this massive craving to break a dish. So I'm like waiting for the permission. I think the permission is just about there for myself now. And it's more like, because that seems wrong. I'm like, because I don't like waste, right? Like that, but I need that. And I just have to find the right dishes for myself that like.
Well, do they have, I don't know if they have these in Canada or not, but we actually have what they call smash rooms.
I haven't seen one here, but I am certainly going to look.
I had a friend who took me for my birthday, and I have to admit there was 5 of us, and they put you in like gear, and you get a sledgehammer if you want it.
Yeah.
And I went Office Space. I've always wanted to break the fax machine like they do in Office Space.
Yeah.
So I got the printer. I'm like, that printer is my birthday is mine.
Brilliant, right? Because we need to release these things, and it can look in all sorts of ways. But it's better to smash a printer than yell at someone we love the most, or at ourselves, right?
Or punch that pillow.
We got to get it out. We have to get it out, and it's okay. Like, take permission to get those things out. Not only rage, but that is obviously a big emotion, and I think one that every female has because of the way that the world is. But also all of the other range and spectrum of emotions that we have. So, yeah.
I think I agree with that so much. The rage that's coming in, and that's, I think leading us both to speak out and to be here. And again, what I've been like formulating is my whole mission and goal is like getting women to be the economics in terms of being able to control their own money and to believe in their messaging and how they want to create and being able to do that. And I know I haven't quite done that for myself yet, but that's the goal. That's what this is all about, is creating that voice, that messaging. And I believe you're right there with me in terms of that permission to let's do this. Like, let's change things. I mean, the Dalai Lama's even prophesized it in 2009, saying the Western woman's going to save the world. We got to do it.
Yeah. Exactly. And you are doing it, and we are doing it. You say you're not there, but you are actually. Like, the action itself of doing all of this work is being there, and the rest will fall into place. I truly believe it, right? We just do and then see what happens.
See, I need the permission right there, Mel. Thanks.
Permission to keep going, permission to like control your finances and believe that this message is worth putting out there.
And I just, so like, it's just coming straight from the heart, and like just the energy is just coming forth. I can see it from you too. It's just like, we need to do something different. And you're right. And getting the rage out, like you were saying about the patriarchy and stuff, but then what do we do about it now? So we were releasing the rage and then taking the actions necessary to take control, I don't even know if the word control is right, but just to change the dynamics of it all. Like you said, the permission of it all. And I think that's why these messages are so powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
And on that note, since we are running a little bit out of time, we're going to run into our questions for Mel. Unless there's any final tidbits you want to give us on what we've been speaking about before we run into our 5 questions.
No, I think we've covered it. It's that permission to be human, that community, that connection with yourself and others will, all encompassed by this learning or not learning, definitely learning, but listening and feeling heard. If we could all get that, then it is us women that are going to go and change the world. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. And we already are, right? We already are. And like celebrating the fact that we are, even if that doesn't mean the $1 million, like, even if that doesn't mean the $1 million in our pocket yet, right? But it's the action that we're taking. And even, like if one person listens to this and it changes the course of their life, I would be 100% happy with the fact that we did this, right?
We've already had two views live on this. So
there you go, right? So that's what impact is. And it's okay. Like, it's not about numbers. It's about like the quality of the information we're putting out there. And what we're saying is, you matter. Like you do. You matter, Michelle. And every woman listening to this matters. And let's get you believing it. Right.
And let's get you opening up to those dreams that are in there and making them a reality. That's what the seen and being heard is. And what we're both creating that community to find that support to be able to do this. And that's what I think it truly just comes down to, is why I'm even doing the Genius podcast, because I believe every one of us has that genius inside of us needing to be seen and heard, like you said, but we need the support as women to have the permission, as you put it, and to really come forth. And that's what this is all about. So come on, women.
Yeah, totally.
All right, we're going to dive into Mel's 5 questions for us. So number 1, share your favorite book or resource that has a significant impact on your journey as a mama.
Sure. So I was thinking about this one, and I decided to just go with recent, which is what I'm actually reading right now. And it is like within one chapter, totally shifted my perspective. So it's called Sensitive. I'll hold it up here. Whoa. Sensitive. And it's by Jen Granman and Andre Solo. And it is all about this concept of highly sensitive people. And it has completely shifted my perspective on myself, who would identify as that, having read it, and on my daughter and children in general, I think, and actually many children that I've met along the way. And it's this concept that so often we can look at our kids and like wonder what, if they're a little quirky or a little different, we want to diagnose them. And not saying there aren't diagnosable things out there, but we're kind of we're like, oh, what's wrong if they're the ones standing at the back of the room, or they don't want to go at recess, or, all the little things that come out. And this book is all about the research showing that I think it's 20 to 30% of people have this human trait that is highly sensitive. So that basically means we feel deeply, and therefore we get overstimulated very quickly, right? So I'm looking at it going, oh, like I get it now. I get why it bothers me when the radio is on in the car and someone's trying to talk to me, because it just becomes too much. I'm like, right? I get why I want to, like, especially a movie about animals, I will just cry. Like if anything goes wrong, because I just feel deeply, right? How I can literally feel empathy for anybody in the world. And that's a big thing to say, because there's some people making very poor choices in the world right now. But I can feel the empathy and like the curiosity around it. And that's this whole thing about sensitive. And so I highly recommend reading it, because if you're not it, or your kid wouldn't identify as this, I bet you know someone who would.
Well, I love that. And again, it's just being more open-minded to how other people interpret things. And I think that's what it comes down to, is that we lead with curiosity and trying to understand rather than fix.
Exactly. This one's understanding. And it also argues that this is as a human species, we wouldn't be alive if this was not a superpower. It would have been out of us already. Right. So it's showing like how many incredible things we can do because this is the person that we are.
Well, I love that you put that up about the schoolyard too, because sometimes we're so busy trying to make sure that they do the same thing as everyone else. And sometimes it's learning to celebrate the fact that they are out of the box and doing things a little bit differently, because that's how we get all the creativity and things. It's not by conforming to what everyone else is doing. It's by being the genius, being the person that we are meant to be. And so the more we start celebrating that and seeing that in our kids and admiring that instead of putting it as a negative, the more we're
Exactly. And actually, like in the case of a highly sensitive child, they may well be protecting themselves in order to best learn in a little bit, because it's overstimulating to have all of this sound and have these balls flying everywhere and to whatever, right? Like all these things, like I look at it, I'm like, I would be overstimulated at recess right now. So like, I get it.
I hated recess duty when I had to do it, but there have been many times where I had to be on the playground as adults. I'm like, I don't want to be here. I can't imagine kids not wanting to be there either.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I really recommend the book Sensitive, and there's a bunch of books around it, but this one's really good. Yeah.
And number 2 for us is, what is a special family tradition or ritual that brings joy and connection to your household?
Yeah, so I'll bring a Christmas one out because we're running up to that time of years right now. And it's just the simplest little thing where there's lots around Christmas, but on Christmas Eve, my family will always jump in the car with cookies that we made together, right? So Christmas cookies that we made together. We'll jump in the car, dog included. And
the dog eating the cookies?
No cookies for the dog. I'm sorry, dog. No, that was like a bad night in my house. But the dog, we used to, I don't know if she could do it this year. Usually we let her come in the front with us, but she's pretty big now, and sit on the seat. But, and we just drive around really slowly and look at Christmas lights and play Christmas music and let the kids like really reach out the window and do whatever they need to do. And I think it's just the fact that it's every year, the fact that we slow down, and the fact that we will make sure we take that time to do it together. Because it would be really easy, especially if we're not here, like we went, to a parent's or like we traveled somewhere. It'd be really easy to just not do it. But my kids are so good at reminding me that like those rituals matter. And that's where we feel our connection. So
I love that so much. We were actually last night just talking about, because we have some like actual places that, like one of the campgrounds actually decorates the whole campground, and it's like a mile drive. And so we're just, because we, like you said, you can get, so the last 2 weekends have been all swim meets. So we haven't had a chance to do that as a family. And so this will be the first time we're like, okay, well, Friday night, we're planning it now. Like we're making sure we're putting in the things that we want to do. And I was like, also, I thought we had one more weekend of Christmas. And I was like, we don't. We only have 1 weekend left.
No, we have 2 weekends left.
No.
Yes, we do, because Christmas is on Monday.
Okay, well, sorry, I take that back. We leave for our Christmas.
Oh, okay. You leave on that weekend.
And so Christmas itself, yes, but for like Christmas vacation to start, like this is it.
Yeah. Totally.
I was like, yeah. And my son's birthday is Christmas Eve, so it always throws a wrench into
okay. But even more.
Everything. We can't be on the road on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, fair.
Tradition.
Yeah.
Number 3. This leads to what we were talking about, a lot of the busyness, right? That's why I want to open this conversation up to it, because I even call moms out as busy moms, because that's how we've identified ourselves. And so a lot of times I'll catch myself, or people ask, how are you doing? And then the answer will be, I'm busy, blah, blah, blah. And I'm still trying to figure out different questions to ask, because I swear all of last week, I've caught myself 5 times just automatically out of my mouth. How are you doing? I'm like, what? Hi, Jenna. Say hi to Jenna.
Hi, Jenna. I have 2 answers to this question. One is that it's okay to ask the question, how are you doing? And listen to their answer, which will not be, it'll be superficial. And then actually say, how are you actually doing? Right? So you can do a follow-up question, because pretty much every mom I talk to, unless they've practiced this a lot, will not answer the question about how are they doing. They'll tell me all about their kids. I'm like, no, I asked you how you are doing. Right. And then we'll lead on to there. And that's always powerful. That being said, there's also really good other question that we can pull from positive psychology, which is what's good. And it leads in great places. What's good? Because our natural tendency, that's it, right? Well, yeah, hyphenated, apostrophated. That's a word.
We'll call it 2 words.
Right? So simple. And because of negativity bias, which is a human nature, like that's what we all do, we see the negative first. But by saying what's good, we're inviting people to remember the good. And that doesn't mean we're negating, we're still giving permission to be human and all the negative stuff in our life. But we can start with what's good. And that will get us moving in a direction that feels good. Right? Yeah.
Mind blown right now. Okay, I got whatever you want to call it, 2 words, 3 words, hyphenate, whatever. What's good?
Yeah.
I'm going to work on getting, how are you doing out of my head?
Yeah. And actually, if you're facilitating a group or something, it's a really nice place to start as well. And I can't quote exactly what the research is, but there is research around the fact that that improves our positivity and our mood. Yeah.
See, this is why I'm asking the question. I'm getting such insightful things from all the speakers.
Nice.
And number 4, describe what genius means to you and how do you feel being in your genius zone?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question because without knowing your work and what you're doing, genius would simply mean someone who's really intelligent, right? That being said, intelligence is more than what you can do academically, right? So we can open that up to genius meaning meaning all the stuff that's in that sensitive book, right? It's meaning that you have this awareness and intelligence of yourself and of other people and of the world around you. And that I love the way you use the word genius because it's saying we can all tap into it. It's basically our strengths, right? It's the way that like we all have them. It's our purpose. It's our like what we're good at, the way we go about the world and giving ourselves permission to just be that person. Then we find our genius. Yeah.
I love that. And number 5, how do you encourage your children or any child to explore new skills and passions and live in their genius?
Oh, that's a good question. How do I do that? The answer that comes to mind immediately is get them outside. Right? And Jenna, if she's still watching, will be like, yes, right? Because, and I say that because nature has so many healing factors to it, but also it forces us to slow down. It doesn't force, it allows us to get regulated because kids are so often dysregulated. As humans, we're so often dysregulated. We're either like overexcited or like somewhere in between, but we're often dysregulated. So get them outside and allow them to start exploring whatever that genius means for them, right? I think we allow them to play outside, not always setting them up with an activity that they have to do or whatever, just allow them to play and play with them. Then their genius and who they are will come about and then celebrate it with them.
I love that.
Yeah.
And actually the idea of getting outside, I was actually a podcast I just did last week. She was talking about how she's talking about a lot about the the safety of the computers, but she also came up that kids are so busy in front of screens, they're not developing their farsightedness anymore. Like they can't even see farsighted anymore because of this in front of them. So the more we give them the opportunity to even develop their senses and the things around them, the further they're going to bring in their genius as well, because we're inhibiting some of that. And again, we're going to lose that adaptation if we're not using it. It's so vital to get all of this into who we are and see the different perspectives. Totally. Well, thank you so much, Mel, for coming on today. What I'd like to end with is your final take on whatever you want to share with the audience and how people can get a hold of you.
Sure. So you can get a hold of me on Facebook or Instagram, which is Permission to Be Human Coaching on Instagram and just Permission to Be Human on Facebook. And like message me and follow, like you want a podcast that's similar to Michelle's with all sorts of amazing stories of people living their big audacious dreams, then Permission to Be Human, the podcast, is another place for you to hang out. And I am always open to conversations with people. I do have a freebie that we can share with people around being guilt-free. And it's, I can't remember how many people I interviewed that they're adults now, but when they were kids, their parents were entrepreneurs. And to show like what that's taught them and how they feel about that. It's a really powerful stories to read. So you can connect with that at permissiontobehuman.ca/guilt-free mompreneur. And then I have a new one coming out soon. So do follow me on Facebook and Instagram, because it will be all about this seen and heard thing, and some really practical tools to do that, including a link to have 15 minutes of me just listening. No sales, just me saying, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing. So that will be in there as well. Yeah, I look forward to connecting with anybody who would love to.
I love that so much. And again, it is really about being seen and heard in that community and finding those people. And again, if you're listening to this and you're feeling it and not finding that around you, because sometimes that's what happens is when we change our energy and we decide we want something else, the people around us just aren't on that yet. And that's okay. That doesn't mean you have to discard them. It just means that you still need other people to help make sure you don't lose that energy. You don't want the other people to bring you down. And so you just do things differently with them than you would have in the past. And
totally. And you know what? Also, like, it's not even that they want to bring you down. It's just that they're helpful at a different phase of your journey. Right. My husband is not the person I tell about a big dream before I have the facts of like how I want to do it, because that's the way his brain works. He wants to really like dig in and be like, oh, but like, how are you going to do that? I'm like, I'm not on how yet. I want to talk to someone about why and what. Right.
And that's
actually like what I do with people. I don't focus on how, I focus on the why and the what. So I find other people who want to focus on why and what in that moment. And later he will be super helpful. Well, right now, like depending on where the idea is, it can be super duper helpful. So, it's not even saying no to those people. It's just saying not right now. So
I love that. Because exactly. It's just making sure the energy is right when you're sharing these things, and you don't want the flame of your dream to go out. Yeah. And that's why Mel and I are here doing what we want to do, is we want more women to grow that fire so that you do feel confident to share with your spouse or other people who might not be there yet, but then you're going to encourage them to get there. And that's what this is all about, the ripple effect. So let's keep the ripple effect going. And I'll see you next time on the Genius Hub podcast. Bye, everyone.